After failed attempts by several men, a blind man enters the burning building and pulls a man to safety. Absolutely amazing. This video is about my uncle, my hero. At age 16, he was blind by a couple of freak accidents. A piece of metal went into one eye. A year later, got hit in the other eye with a stick that left him blind. Now, from age 16 to age 30, I can't imagine what his life was like. When he was younger, before he lost his sight, he always liked to tinker around with engines and things like that, small engines and stuff like that. And then after he was blind, he got married and he had 3 kids. He got a blind man's pension from the state. Was $94 a month. It's not much. That's all he had. That's the money that he had, and he had 3 kids. To supplement his income, him and his buddy become junkers, or salvage people. They used to call them junkers. They would go around and they would collect all the metal that people didn't want, and then they would stockpile it. When they got enough, they would load this big truck up, take it to the city where they paid more money for junk, and he would sell it, and that's the way he supplemented his income. Now, he lived on a creek. The creek emptied into the Ohio River, and across that creek was a bridge. They called it the Wagon Wheel Bridge. One day he's down there fishing, and he always had his fishing pole set up to where he had bells on the end of them, because a lot of times he'd be smoking cigarettes and drinking beer, and he didn't have time to hold the line. So the bell alarmed him when he was getting a bite. He's down there fishing, and he hears a couple of guys up on the bridge about 75 yards from where he was fishing at. He couldn't understand what they were saying, but he could hear them. You know, blind people get that way. Their other senses increase if they can't see. All at once he hears this huge splash in the water. And then the other guy starts screaming for help. Between the guy on the bridge screaming and the guy in the water screaming and flailing around, my uncle stands up and he hollers at the guy on the bridge, says, "Guide me to your friend." And he dives in the water and starts swimming towards the noise. As best he could, the guy up on the bridge guided my uncle to the drowning man. My uncle managed to drag him to the bank. By this time, a crowd had gathered. Emergency people got there, and my uncle had saved that guy's life. Now the town, to show their appreciation, they made arrangements to send him to Kansas City to a blind man's school to be an auto mechanic, that was a good opportunity for him. I mean, that one heroic act opened a door for him. So off to Kansas City he went. Now his wife and kids stayed back here. Now this was before my time. I'm going by family stories up to this point. Well, when he gets to the Kansas City, I guess the people that was in the school, they kept him in this hotel. All right. So now here, I'm going to read from the clipping from Kansas City newspaper, just a part of this article. When rescue efforts by several other men failed Friday, January 23rd, Goodpaster, who had been blind since he was 16 years old, entered a room on fire at the Terminal Hotel in Kansas City and dragged an unconscious man to safety. The newspaper states, when seeing men failed, Goodpaster managed to crawl across the 3rd floor smoke-filled room of James Thomas, got a hold on the ladder's belt, and dragged him to the door where other tenants came to his assistance. Now here's that newspaper article. All right. Amazing. And so a bank president got together and started an old-fashioned version of GoFundMe and collected enough money to buy him a Braille watch. And that watch actually became one of his prized possessions. Fascinated a lot of people. People back here had never seen one of those, and he was always willing to show how it worked. And it was just amazing to us that a blind man could actually tell time. And for his heroic deed, the American Red Cross give him this award. And that award became one of his prized possessions. I'll tell you how I got this award later in the video. So he returns home and he's an auto mechanic. Man, what a break. People come from miles around just to have him work on their vehicle. Now back then, vehicles weren't that complicated. So it wasn't like a modern day vehicle. He had a set of magnetic tools that they awarded him, that school awarded him. And people would just watch him work on their car. And this is when it began. This is when the problem began. When they brought their car for him to work on, they would watch. They would bring beer. They would give him beer. Oh, drink a beer. You know, let's drink a beer. Or they would be glad that he got their car fixed and they would drink a beer. And so this went on, and he was doing pretty good. He still junked on the side from time to time, but he was making money from working on vehicles. But alcohol became more prevalent in his life. And that's, that's a sad thing. But he had such a sense of humor. When I was a kid, that was one of my favorite places to go. Not just mine, but my friends also. Because if we was messing around my house and my mom and dad said, well, we're going to go down to see Marion, my friends would say, can we go? Can we go with you? So a lot of times there would be me and my brothers and as many people as we could pile in a car would go down there to see my Uncle Marion. He was fun. He was so nice to be around, and he was funny, and he was always feeling good. He was just good to be around. And jokes, he would tell you jokes. He would sing jingles, and all the jokes that I know and all the jingles that I know, I learned from that guy when I was a kid. And as time went by, I got closer and closer and closer to him. And at one time, I had a part-time job down there, and I would get a ride to town, and I would always get there early. So I'd had about an hour and a half to wait before I went to work. So I'd always stop by his house. And when I stopped by his house, I would just sit there and talk to him, His wife would be sitting there rolling. They rolled their own cigarettes, to cut cost on it and stuff like this. And one time I walked in there, and every time I would get close to the door, he would say, hey, come on in, Rob. And I would wonder, well, how did you know I was out there? So I asked him, I said, how did you know I was out there? He said, I can hear you. And then it dawned on me, if you can't see, your other senses kick in. One time I walked into his house and, he had a couple of glass eyes. And glass eyes don't look bad, but they don't look real either. And you have to take them out to clean them from time to time. I walk in his house and he's standing by the refrigerator and he's holding one of his glass eyes up, pointing down at the top of the refrigerator. And I said, Uncle Marion, what are you doing? He says, what do you mean, what am I doing? I'm looking for something on top of the refrigerator. I thought, man, this guy is wild. And another time I walk in there and he's sitting at the table and he's got a newspaper held up like this. So I look at him and his wife's over there rolling cigarettes, And I said, Uncle Marion, you got the newspaper upside down. He said, I know it. He said, anybody can read right side up, but not everybody can read upside down. And then he would just laugh. He was just a big jokester, an easy man to fall in love with. I mean, I love being around that guy. Well, the city arranged for him to go to Grayling, Michigan and get his first CNI dog. So he went up there, stayed for 6 weeks, come back, and the dog's name was Jet. And he was just as proud as could be. It was the black lab. He was just as proud as he could be about that dog. And so after that, he was getting older, and he was kind of getting tired of messing with vehicles and stuff like that. So a lot of times he would be running short on money. And I can remember this. He played a harmonica, and he played it well. And he was a handsome man. My mom played piano and guitar, and they would get together and when they was younger and play music and stuff like this. From time to time, when my uncle was running short on money, what he would do, he would go get cleaned up. He would get his cane out, and then he would tell his wife that I'm going to go over town. And what he would do, he would take his harmonica, and he would go into a bar, and the people that owned the bar, they loved him coming in there. And he would start playing harmonica, and people would start buying him drinks, and he never had to spend any money to drink. And so as time went by, alcohol started becoming a problem. Now here's a picture of him when he was, he might have been 50 years old. That would be the guy with the glasses, with his two sisters. Now my uncle, like I say, he was very charismatic, very good looking, and he didn't sit around wallowing in self-pity. But as years went by, more and more alcohol entered his life. And then it got worse. From time to time, he would try to stop drinking. He had many, many failed attempts. But now one thing, I have to tell you this. I learned a lot as a teenager being around a blind person. For one, he taught me how to lead a blind person, because one time he asked me, he said, take me over here. And I grabbed a hold of him. He said, don't grab me. He said, don't grab me. I'm not a dog. Don't lead me like a dog. He said, let me show you how to do this. You get out in front of me, and I'll hold on to you. And then you tell me what you see. You guide me. So if you've seen a crack, you had to say a crack. There's a step up. We're turning left. We're turning right. You was actually guiding them. And to take that a step further, a lot of times I would be at his house and he would say, well, let's go watch TV. And this was really, it was kind of difficult for me, but I caught on to it pretty well. We would sit side by side on the couch, and he would say, well, what do you see? And then my aunt would say, you have to describe to him what you see on the TV. And so it was like you're sitting there watching a movie, and you say, two guys walked into the door. One guy has his hand on the gun. The other guy's looking behind him. And you had to describe a movie like that. Or here's three guys riding towards the river on a horse. There's two guys behind them. And it actually, you couldn't remember what the movie was about, but you describe it. It was odd. It was the oddest thing. But after a certain amount of time, you'd catch on to that, see? And, but that's just a couple of little things that you learn being around a blind guy. So anyway, his trips to town and drinking got worse and worse and worse. And at one time, he started selling, he made homebrew, and he made homebrew and wine. He was pretty good at it. And he started selling it out of the back of his house on Sundays. Now, I believe the authorities knew that, but I think they just turned a blind eye to it because they knew He was just trying to make extra money. So see, the gig world nowadays, the people are always talking about, you need to have a gig. What kind of a gig do you have? That's been going on forever, because people that didn't have a lot, they would use their imagination and come up with ways that they could make money, whether it was junking, working on cars, playing a harmonica in a bar, or, you know, selling homebrew out of the back of their house. I mean, they did that. So as time went by, he kept drinking and drinking, and I kind of lost contact with him, and because he ended up divorced, and you can imagine all the bad stuff that alcohol brings about, he was subject to. I mean, he was not in a good spot. And I'd ask my mom about him from time to time, and even after I was married and had a couple of kids, she would tell me how he was doing, and he just was not doing good. And so every time she would see him, he'd ask about me. So I took my kids down there to see him. It was bad. But I had to do it for him. He made it till he was 55. My kids, they got to see him, but not at his best. Shortly after that, he passed. And that's how. That's how alcohol kills heroes. See you next time.